proceed when ready.
Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury, may it please the court. The prosecution just came before you and told you that Miss Bancroft had her own free will, that she made her choices of her own free will. And there was a time when she could. There was a time where she did. But then, times changed. And the only person who ever forced her hand was Mickey Keenan, the puppet master of today's case. Miss Avery Bancroft, a woman of integrity, of values and of justice, and of values taught to her by her father, was pushed and controlled and forced into committing a bribe. Now, the plaintiff had a burden in today's case. The prosecution's burden was this. They had to prove to you that Miss Bancroft was predisposed to committing a crime of bribery. However, as you can see from this analysis, they did not meet their burden today. First of all, you heard from their witness, Ms. Del Sesto. Ms. Del Sesto came to the stand and was supposed to tell you about the amount of security present at the meetings at the Black Bear Casinos Hotel. And while she was able to tell you that she saw a great amount of security, she wasn't able to tell you about what happened at that meeting. She was present for dropping off the food, and all she could see was the kind of briefcase that Mr. Covington had. Furthermore, Ms. Del Sesto even told you on the stand that she had never seen any meeting like this before at the Black Bear Casino. Miss Bancroft, who owns that casino, had never implemented such security measures before. So then why would she start doing it all of a sudden? It's because Mickey Keenan forced her hand. She didn't have a choice, members of the jury. She had to bribe Mr. Covington. Then you heard from linguist Reese Warren, who was supposed to come and give his professional opinion on today's case. But the truth is, Dr. Reese Warren was able to tell you about the transcript that he was given of the March 31st conversation. And while he could tell you about that transcript, he couldn't tell you the details in between. He couldn't tell you what happened physically or verbally or even through signals on March 31st. He could tell you what was on the transcript, but he couldn't tell you if there were any signals sent. He couldn't tell you if Ms. Hyde's statement in that meeting were induced by Mickey Keenan, which, as we showed in today's case, they were. You saw the email, ladies and gentlemen, that Detective Keenan sent Ms. Hyde the day before that meeting. He told her that it was necessary for her to talk about sweetening the pot to Miss Bancroft. And although that was Detective Keenan's doing, Ms. Hyde became the instigator. She was induced into doing this. And by looking solely at that transcript, Dr. Reese Warren wasn't able to tell you that. Furthermore, Dr. Warren was provided with a tape recording. And in that tape recording, he even admitted on cross-examination that there were interruptions, there was static, and there may have been errors. Furthermore, he couldn't see what was going on during that tape recording. The fact that he was given a tape recording and a transcript to conduct his analysis can't tell us what truly happened at these meetings. He can't tell us about the signals. He can't tell us about that napkin that was pushed over the table twice. He can't tell us about how Detective Keenan pushed the napkin twice to Miss Bancroft. And even after she wiped her face the first time to signal that she didn't want a part in this, he pushed it to her again. Then you heard from Detective Keenan, and you learned the truth behind that napkin. He provided her with a pen, a napkin twice, and as he did so, he told her, it's all about the money. He also pushed Miss Hyde into becoming involved in today's case. Miss Hyde, someone loyal to her boss, Miss Bancroft, who knew that she would never do such a thing on her own. Miss Bancroft is a woman of integrity, of values. She followed what her father taught her. And she didn't compromise those values for anyone until the true puppet master came along. And he tugged at her hand. We as the defense also had a burden. And our burden was to show you that Miss Bancroft was induced. And we've met that burden today. You've heard from our 3 witnesses. And our first witness was Miss Bancroft. She came to the stand and told you about how she was so disappointed in herself. She couldn't believe at what she had done. She was beside herself. She was pushed. She was made to feel uncomfortable. Mickey Keenan pushed and pulled at the strings and became the true puppet master, forcing a woman of strong values to break and submit to a bribe. Then you heard from J.D. Lorien, an expert and the owner of a consulting firm on legal tactics in the police industry and undercover operations. Ms. Lorien came to the stand and told you about how she found little to no documentation and many violations of standard industry practices of undercover operations. She even expressed her concerns about Detective Keenan's lack of training and how she found little to no documentation on this. Members of the jury, Detective Keenan's investigation was not about finding the truth. It was about gaining something of his own means, and that's power. He became the puppet master and forced Miss Bancroft's hand. Finally, you heard from Miss Corey Hyde, the assistant to Miss Bancroft, who had worked with her since she came from college. She saw Miss Bancroft, she's seen her work, and she knows her values on a second hand. She told you that she couldn't believe any possibility of Miss Bancroft ever wanting to bribe anyone. That is, until she and her boss were tracked by the puppet master, Mickey Keenan. Members of the jury, today's case isn't about a woman who wanted money. It isn't about a woman who's greedy. It's about a woman with strong values, who believed in integrity and fair business. It's about a woman who owned a casino that benefited all of Midlands, that provided people with jobs, that provided people with all kinds of resources and a place to come to enjoy themselves. She had her own free will some time ago. And that free will was taken when Mickey Keenan walked through the door of the Black Bear Casino and tugged at her hand. That free will was taken when he pushed Corey Hyde into becoming involved with that investigation. That free will was taken when he slid that napkin over twice, not once but twice, even after she refused the first time, and gave her a pen and told her it's all about the money. That free will was taken, and Miss Bancroft was left with no choice. She made a bribe, leaving her ashamed, upset, besides herself. Members of the jury, there is only one verdict that we ask today that you can give, given all the evidence before you, and that is to find Miss Avery Bancroft not guilty of the crime of bribery. Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor. May I inquire, Mr. Hammerstein? If you are for sale, I am willing to pay, no matter what it is. When you say that before Mickey Keenan even started investigating you, you are not a puppet, you are a master. When you set up a private meeting with no phones, no recording devices, and no cameras to talk about a negotiation on a bribe, you are not a puppet, you are the master. When you write out a bribe agreement, yes equals $250K, when Mickey Keenan never even told you to bring up a bribe, you are not a puppet, you are the master. When you put in $250,000 by yourself into a briefcase, You are not a puppet, members of the jury. You're doing this of your own free will. When you go to a meeting with Mickey Keenan in there, the person that supposedly forced you to do it, and then you leave and you make the bribe of your own accord, you are not a puppet. Members of the jury, this case is about choices. The defendant chose at every single step to bribe the commissioner. She chose that because she wanted a new casino. It was her choices that got her here today. No one forced her hand. That's why we ask that you find her guilty. Thank you.
Thank you.